Today we have the pleasure to interview the director of SOSORO Museum, Mr. Blas. How are you today?
Thank you very much, I'm fine.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about the history about the museum? Especially we'll start off with the building itself. It has a bit of heritage.
All right, so the museum where we are right now, the SOSORO Museum, used to be the municipality in 1908 during the time of the French Protectorate. So this is a heritage building which has been renovated and I would say reorganized, especially in the inside, by the National Bank of Cambodia, who owns and created the museum to realize this Museum of Economy and Money that we call SOSORO Museum because it's shorter to call the Cambodian acronym.
Okay, so you have two buildings. One specialized just with the National Bank about the money and the different currencies from Cambodia, and of course the building we're in at the moment, which holds different exhibitions. And today we have an exhibition with the King in 1906 going to France.
Yes, so the main building is the permanent exhibition, as we call it, and currently we are standing in the room where we display temporary exhibitions, and this particular temporary exhibition is about the journey of His Majesty King Sisovat to France in 1906.
Can you tell us a little about what happened and what he did during that tour?
Sure, it's a very important event in Cambodian history for political, diplomatic and also cultural reasons. It's also the first time that the Cambodian king would travel all the way to the west. I mean, you had, of course, probably some other journeys throughout the region, but it was the first time that the Cambodian king would travel to the west. So when the king of Cambodia arrived in France in 1906, it was the first time that he would see France, but it was also the first time that the French and European people would see Cambodia in the flesh, if I may say. And it's also very important because it's also the first time that the royal ballet would move out of Cambodia and give performances for a general public who was not Cambodian and was not knowledgeable of the meaning of the royal ballet. So for many reasons, it's a little bit the first time that Cambodia would emerge on the Western stage, and it had lasting consequences because due to his personality and his diplomatic skills and his overall appearance, the king became an instant icon in France. Every French newspaper would cover all of his activities for the 5 weeks he would spend in there. And the people of France, not just the leaders who would officially host him, but the people of France became really enthusiastic and completely in love with this faraway king who would travel all the way to France.
So is this where the friendship between Cambodia and France really took off and started? Because they have a special relationship now.
Let's say that in between the beginning of the protectorate, which did not start very well, and the future struggle for independence, you have this period of time where you have some kind of appeasement in the relationships. King Sisovat was not at all submitted to the French, but he realized that it was probably a little bit early, to claim independence. He also, as a soldier, had fought alongside the French against the rebels who tried to topple his brother King Norodom. So he knew about the French military might of the time and technological advances. So he thought he could maybe capitalize on that to further build his nation. And at the same time, the French had a good relationship with him. So they thought they could capitalize on this head of state to continue managing the country. So it's just, let's say, pragmatism from both sides, at a time where Cambodia, after many centuries of infighting, was finally at peace. And so for a number of reasons, yes, it's quite a particular era between the French and the Cambodians and for Cambodia, knowing that, again, the king was certainly not submitted, but he was very pragmatic and he took what he could take from this. And besides that, he was very curious. He was a curious man. He was a very physically courageous man. So when he undertook his journey, he was more than 60 years old. And so at the time, he was very old in 1906, but still he undertook this whole journey with a lot of vigor and energy, and he managed to captivate the attention of a whole country of France.
So the exhibition you have here at the moment is running until April?
Yes, so it's a temporary exhibition which we inaugurated in October. The exhibition was inaugurated by the governor of the National Bank, again because we are under the National Bank, in the presence of the French ambassador also and many other attendants, and it's going to run at least until April 2023 indeed.
Excellent. And just tell us a little bit about the history and what we've got here, so what people expect to see when they come.
So first of all, it's a very visual exhibition. So we have a lot of pictures and postcards and enlargement of pictures from 1906, France and Cambodia. We have a lot of pictures displaying His Majesty the King in different outfits. We also have a lot of press clips, that we have discovered in the archives. So this is the result of a lot of research. And we also have, because this is the specificity of our museum, it's very visual and interactive to a certain point. So we have videos and comments by especially a scholar, Professor Olivier de Bernon, who was probably the most knowledgeable scholar of this particular event, who explain and recount the story of this journey from many different perspectives. And we also have a specific corner on the Royal Ballet, because again, it was the first time that the Royal Ballet would emerge on the international stage and get this artistic recognition, because initially it's more like a ritual. You know that maybe 100 years later, this recognition will culminate with the inscription of the Royal Ballet on the Intangible Heritage List of UNESCO.
Excellent. Just behind us here, we have a case of different medals. You just explain about what's so special about them.
Yes. So first we have the king in a traditional regalia, if I may say, and here we have a few medals from the reign of King Sisovat, some silver and gold medals. We also have a medal of honor here from the time of King Sisovat. So this is also to display, the coins and medals that were in existence during his reign, because this is part of the history as well. But besides that, we also have plenty of pictures, of drawings, of maps of Cambodia and France of the time. So the visitors who will come here will really journey through history and dive into 1906 France and Cambodia.
Yeah, I've noticed some of your posters around the other side there of the king in France, with the media attending and also all the people. And then, of course, in those days, it was a big crowd.
Yes. So,
of course, it's different then than it was now.
It's true. What is interesting is that many head of states had visited France at the time, but for many reasons, especially related to his skill at diplomacy and also his, what you would call nowadays, his interpersonal skills, King Sisovat received a welcome that no other head of state ever had received at the time. He was cheered by the crowds. He was warmly welcomed by the leaders. He made the headlines of the press in Paris and in the provinces for the whole 5 weeks of his stay. And so you have this whole, what we call here a little bit bluntly, the Sisovat mania, which was created during his journey. And by visiting the exhibition, you take a measure of this extraordinary popularity of the king, to the point that even popular songs would be penned in French about the king.
Oh, yes. Excellent.
Yes.
And of course, the picture just behind you here is just in Phnom Penh here, just before he left to go to France?
Yes, it's this one is a picture of his coronation festivities, actually, because indeed the king succeeded his brother King Norodom in 1904, and as soon as 1906 he was already traveling to France. So this is a decision he made himself. He was eager to discover France. He wanted to learn more about technological advancements, military equipment, and so on. And so he made this decision at a very old age for the time, against the advice of some of his mandarins, actually, because he had this willingness to discover, to understand, and because he was indeed a very courageous man. Because, you have to imagine that back in the days, it was not a few hours of plane, right? It was weeks at sea, many stopovers, and then 5 weeks traveling through Marseille, Paris, Nancy, and many other places, and then traveling back again to Cambodia. So, but eventually, according to the accounts that we have, he was the only one not to be tired. Yes.
Yes. And of course, over there we have a picture of the two kings, or the king and
yes,
his son.
We have a picture which is way after the journey to France, actually, but it's a beautiful picture. It's a picture of King Sisovat, probably the last picture of the king alive in 1925. He will pass in 1927, and next to him is sitting who is then Prince Monivong, who will become King Sisovat Monivong. And it's a beautiful picture because you see the king really at the apex of his career, if I may say, very confident and very serene at the same time. You see the prince who is probably looking to the future with a little bit more of worry, because the burden is coming soon on his shoulder. And also because Prince Monivong traveled to France with the king, his father, but then he stayed on to join the military school of Saint-Mexan, and so he became a cadet officer there before coming back to Cambodia. So this is a beautiful picture of the king, then king, and the one who will become the next king after King Sisovat, yes.
And then, of course, also you have other pictures of adults, obviously from France,
yes,
as well, next to the king, and they're obviously the people that he met while he was in France.
The people that he met when he was in France, and there is a very interesting background story to this visit, because geopolitically at the time France is a top world power, but the other one is England, and there is some competition between France and England, and the geopolitical background of this story is the question of the border between then Siam, Thailand, and Cambodia, and the question of the retrocession of the provinces of Siem Reap and Battambang. And so for the first decades of the protectorate, to the pain of King Norodom, the French are not going to be very interested in getting those provinces back for Cambodia. But during the reign of King Sisovat, this whole thing is going to end in a very happily, if I may say, because you have this trust between the king and the French, and also you have the French colonial officers who managed to convince the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs to negotiate with Siam without having to antagonize England, who was standing behind Siam. And so eventually, a few months after the visit of the king, the finalization of the negotiation to give the provinces of Battambang and Siem Reap back to Cambodia will take place. And we don't have any account of the discussions between the king and the officials, the Minister of Colonies, the President of the Republic, and so on, but we know that it was discussed. And as a matter of fact, a few months after the visit, this will be finalized, and Cambodia will finally recover these long-lost provinces, which are, of course, as you know, the cradle of Cambodian culture and civilization.
So there's a lot of history here in Cambodia, and it's good to see that someone is actually showing the history, because a lot of people don't understand or know the history of Cambodia. They all think of course, the bad things of Cambodia for the Pol Pot and everything else, but they don't realise how good the king had done for Cambodia previously and the history.
Exactly. We have a number of very interesting characters. King Sisovat is one of them. King Ong Duong, whom we talk about in the permanent exhibition, is one of them. Of course, the father of independence, King Sihanouk, and others. But what is interesting is that, as you know, Cambodia is very often known about the Khmer Rouge, indeed, the most tragic part, or even Angkor, the most glorious part, but you have so many other parts of Cambodia's history and so many other stories to tell that the researchers have studied, and digged out, and that we can use for exhibition to share knowledge. A museum is about sharing knowledge to the community, to the society, to the youth, to the visitors, to the tourists, and so on. And so we have a lot of materials to show and to share, besides the usual topics, if I may say, of Angkor, which is extremely important, the Khmer Rouge, which are tragically important to remember, but there are also other stories. And this is one such story that we are telling here.
Excellent, thank you very much. So we have it here at the moment with the exhibition of the King visiting France in 1906. So now we're just going over to the museum to show you the real, so the money that through the Cambodia over the last years. So now we're in the money section of the museum. Can you tell us a little bit about this part of the museum?
Yes. Actually, I want to correct a bit. It's not just the money section. Okay. This museum has two specificities, if I may. The first one is that it takes a historical approach to what is being presented here. And so it is probably the only place in the country where you have a whole overview of 2,000 years of Cambodia's history from the time of Funan all the way until nowadays. And this is very important because it means that whoever comes to this museum, they will actually learn about the history of the country from the economic and monetary perspective. The second characteristic is that this is a very modern and interactive museum. So you will see as we walk through the museum that there is a lot of video podcasts, touchscreens, computers, quizzes, games, puzzles for the visitor to discover knowledge by themselves or to test their knowledge also in a very edutainment, as they say nowadays, education and entertainment, edutainment way. And so the museum is divided in 2 floors and 12 modules, and each module corresponds to a specific era of Cambodia's history. And so now we are standing in the Funan era, and then after this we will have the Angkor era, the post-Angkorian, the French, independence, Lon Nol, Khmer Rouge, and then from 1979 all the way until nowadays. Just to bounce back on what you said, yes, it is very important. We are showing here how political, historical, and social changes are interrelated with economic, monetary, and trade evolutions as well. And so indeed what you have here is the most ancient coin issued by a Cambodian king that has been discovered so far. There is only one single such coin. It dates back to the early 7th century, and it was issued by King Presre Sanvarman, which is the official name of our museum, the Presre Sanvarman Museum, because the king who issued this coin is King Presre Sanvarman, who was king of Chenla in the early 7th century. And so this coin is, again, the most ancient coin issued by a Cambodian king that has been discovered so far, and it was discovered only about 10 years ago, and there is only one such occurrence of this coin.
Where was it discovered?
So it's a long story, and I want people to come and visit the museum to know about it. But when you see this coin, actually maybe more a medal than a coin, but you see very interesting information about the name of the king, the name of his capital city, and a testimony to the Hindu culture and traditions and also religion coming into Southeast Asia as early as then and even before, actually. And so this is quite a unique piece. So I'd rather have people come and discover by themselves, and they will learn not only about the coin, but about the whole historical context around it.
Okay, explain about this person here, Mr. Dong, is it Dong?
So this is King Ong Duong, and King Ong Duong is a very important king in the history of Cambodia, because when he became king in the middle of the 19th century, the country has been through centuries of infighting, and then he realized that the sovereignty of Cambodia was about to disappear, being torn apart between the neighbors of the kingdom. And so he thought he had to do something to restore to as much as possible the sovereignty of his kingdom. And among the many things he did, including restoring a religious and legal framework, he also created a port in Kampot and built a road from Kampot to Udong. So he managed to try to get independent access to the sea to promote trade. And he purchased a press from England through Singapore, and he decided to issue his own coins where he would put the name of the country, symbols that would be related to national identity, the year of his reign. And so here you have a king who understands very well, as we have written here, that currency is a founding act of sovereignty. Very well, as we are writing here, that currency is a founding act of sovereignty, because when you are able to spread your own currency over a given territory, it means that you rule over this territory and that people recognize the authorities that you represent. And so the coins that we have here are coins made of silver that were issued by King Ong Duong as one of the several undertakings that he decided to make in order to restore the sovereignty of Cambodia and his authority over his territory.
Oh, excellent, very good. And this means anything in particular?
So that's the press. Actually, the real one is in the garden. You saw it.
Oh,
because
okay, yeah.
it's 2 tons heavy. It's very heavy. So this is a reproduction, and the visitors can see the real press in the garden downstairs. Excellent. And so this is one of the 3 press that he purchased to press coins, basically. And it was discovered in Udong. And so it was taken away to be exhibited, and so that people can know about this very interesting story. Yes.
So how did they press the coins?
So basically, I think it would be more like one by one, and the press would have to be like manned by either by people or even by cars to pulling it to make it turn, and the coins would be put here, and it would be one by one. So it was not like a systematic system, right? You had to go one by one. But it's a very interesting undertaking by this king, whose reign was a bit short but extremely meaningful to the history of Cambodia. So he's a very significant sovereign in the history of the country. Yes.
So you really have to come to visit to see the history and how the coins were made and
Yes.
money and everything else. And as from a press, something like this, and along the walls everywhere around here, you've got a bit of history and explanation of each section and everything else. I've just noticed a map behind you as well, the different capitals of Cambodia in those times. So I'm assuming that's also different ways of coins, how they knew their money.
So what is interesting is that when you visit the museum, you will realize that there is no evidence of any monetization during the time of Angkor. And so after Angkor, when Cambodia was somehow in a state of constant infighting, the economic and monetary development could not really happen. And that is very interesting, because it is one of the lessons of history, is that as long as the country is not at peace, economic development cannot happen. And this is why also this king decided to create this monetary system. Was a very daring undertaking, because during this time, the country basically is mostly losing territory, losing sovereignty, losing access to the sea, losing the ability to do independent trades. And then this king comes and he tries to start to address these issues. The achievement of independent Cambodia after King Fazan Rodom Sihanouk secured independence in 1953. And we display the first banknotes issued by independent Cambodia for Cambodia, because during the French time you had a currency, but it was by the French for the whole of Indochina. And here this is banknotes and the monetary system by Cambodia for Cambodia. And it's very interesting to look at the display of that are represented on the banknotes, because you see a lot of national symbols. And one of the things we show also in this museum is how money is really connected to sovereignty and to national identity, of course. And the symbols that you see on the banknote usually would be related to your certain idea of your nation. And those first banknotes that were issued from 1955, so 2 years after independence, which is also another interesting story to be discovered in here, are displayed here.
So of course you come and then you'll be able to understand and discover all about this history and everything else. It's worthwhile to come and see this room while you're here.
Exactly. The whole museum.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got something special on this wall. Can you explain this a little bit about us?
Here we are in the period that starts after 1979, so when the Khmer Rouge were toppled from power. And as you know, the People's Republic of Kampuchea, who took over from 1979, found the country which was completely devastated, and the whole economy was simply had stopped working, because one of the extraordinary, tragic and unexplainable decision that the Khmer Rouge made was to actually abolish money. Mm-hmm. And so the new regime had to recreate a central bank and actually recreate the currency from zero and recirculate this currency, mm-hmm. and rebuild the trust of the people in this currency. And so this here is a reproduction of the act of recirculation of the riel in October 1979, after the country had been without money for more than 4 years, actually.
Oh, so that's a big step, isn't it, from abolishing money to have nothing, then all of a sudden to reinvent it.
Exactly.
And to also bring the value up, so it can obviously to go to the exchange for currencies around the world.
Exactly.
So it must have been a big step to come to this spot.
It was a gigantic backward step to abolish money. I think no revolution ever in the world decided to abolish money. And then, yes, you had to take the big step to recreate money and to restart the economy. So, the usual word, restarting from zero, is very much illustrated by this document here.
So it's almost like creating the wheel again, isn't it?
Exactly.
Exactly. And of course, then to work out what the value is.
Exactly. And make it roll and make it work and rebuild the trust of the people in the economy, in the currency. And as you know, money is based on trust. I mean, why do you accept to pay with this, piece of paper, and why do people accept that you pay with it? Because there is a trust on, the legal value of this piece of paper. So when you start from zero, you have to rebuild all of this again.
So it's not that long ago. 79 is 40 years ago.
Can you imagine that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Cambodia was without a currency, and nowadays you can pay your coffee with a QR code, and we have digital banking, and we have Bakong created by the National Bank, and so we have fintech, and so you can imagine the gigantic, leap that has been made from no currency to digital banking and QR code payment system.
Well, that's it. It got 40 years, like you said, and we've known, especially in the last 12 months, with electronic banking, and then of course the Prime Minister yesterday also was promoting about salaries and everything else to stop corruption. And of course, money, as we know, is the biggest thing in corruption anywhere around the world. Is that how the US dollar got involved with Cambodia in 79 when this happened?
Those who visit the museum will see later that actually the dollarization of Cambodia is not an administrative decision by the government at all. It's a kind of historical accident. When the United Nations came to Cambodia in 1992, they had a huge budget. At the time, it was the largest and most expensive UN operation ever in history. Mm-hmm. And the UN budget corresponded to more or less 75% of Cambodia's GDP. And so the dollars were somehow injected into the economy, and people started using it because of trust, because of expectations, of hopes. And this is how dollarization started. And now the National Bank of Cambodia has an objective of progressively realize, so re-injecting more and more real in the economy. But there is a very deep understanding that, again, this is based on market mechanism and trust. And so it's not about deciding overnight, to have only real and no more dollar. It's about raising awareness about the importance of having your own currency and of building the trust of the people in the use of the real. And if the dollarization is still very massive, you can see that the amount of transactions and the quantity of transactions that are being made in real is much more important nowadays than it was 10, 20 or 30 years ago. So this is the real thing, it's really to raise awareness and to build trust in the importance of the national currency. And this is made progressively and in a very responsible way by the National Bank of Cambodia.
We can see that we're slowly phasing out the $1, the US $1 and $5 and slowly onwards. And I think it's a great move that Cambodia is doing. So it's another thing of history we can get to see here at the museum to actually know how this evolved, because not many people know how the US dollar
exactly you can understand how it happened and how it is managed. Yes. And as we further move in the exhibition, we focus more and more on this aspect of things indeed, yes.
Excellent. So we've got here behind us here, it's an illustration of the money, of the Cambodian money and what it's about and everything else. Can you give us a demonstration?
Of course. So this is a digital exhibition. So again, it's very interactive. And here we want very much to show the relationship between money and national identity and therefore sovereignty. These are all the banknotes printed by the National Bank since 1993. We'll still need to add the last 3 ones. And so, for instance, the visitor can pick one banknote that you see here. And you can see these images coming out in 3D. And so you pick one. For instance, you wonder, what is this? And you have here a notice that explains to you what it is. Oh. And so you have topics, so you can go within one topic, royal and national symbols, for instance. Or you can, visit one banknote, if I may say. You can also choose to flip the banknote and see what is happening behind. So here you have, for instance, a portrait of His Majesty the King Father. It is explained. And so you can discover the meaning of all the symbols and images that are displayed of the banknotes, and then you understand why they are here. And for actually His Majesty the King, we even made a video to show that every portrait of the king that is displayed on the banknote is actually chosen from a significant royal activity of His Majesty. So here, for instance, you see every year on the 9th of November, His Majesty goes to the Independence Monument to pay respect and celebrate the independence. And the very moment where he's looking at the Independence Monument here is displayed on the banknotes. So
fascinating.
We do these things, and so people can understand why these images, what are their meaning, and indeed how they convey a sense of national identity.
That's absolutely fascinating. And of course, you've got it in English and Khmer. So
English and Khmer indeed. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
So that way, the local people can actually see the heritage of their real, where the money comes from.
The museum has been entirely established and is entirely supported by the National Bank of Cambodia. We are directly under the cabinet of His Excellency, the Governor of the National Bank of Cambodia. So everything that is displayed here is first and foremost in Khmer, and then in English as well. And in addition, we have audio guides with 5 languages. We have French, English, Chinese, Japanese, and of course Khmer. And we also have very good guides. So in the team we have guides, and so when schools or companies or tours, they want to bring their staff or their colleagues, 10, 15 people or more, we can allocate one guide to take them throughout the whole exhibition. Yeah.
So for schools, I think it'd be interesting to see the heritage for where their money started off with. Like you said, before, during Khmer Rouge, money was abolished. There was nothing there. 79 is the beginning and everything else. And then seeing the interactive of this, exactly the spot that picture was taken from the king.
Yes.
And then, of course, as for businesses, to bring corporate people here, obviously to have a nice day out, find out information from their heritage. Because, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, money is what drives all countries and things.
Everybody who comes here really has a very positive feedback. Yeah. So indeed, a company brings their staff, not only the finance guy, but also the HR guy, the business manager, the clerk, whoever, they will all have an interest in discovering this. The schools bring students, they learn a lot. The tourists are also very interested. And we also receive a lot of diplomats because it's a way for them to understand the country where they are, and to understand looking at the past, they understand how Cambodia is, managing its own present time and planning its future. So it has an interest for everyone. And what is very, very encouraging is that the feedback is always positive. And that is really thanks to the vision of the leadership of the National Bank who established this museum. It took almost 10 years to realize this museum. It's very unique, it's very modern. So you needed, the right vision and the right leadership to actually make it happen. And the result is very positive, especially when you hear the feedback of the visitors.
That's right, and to have every room you have something different and explain the era and the special, and also to get that information about that, because you have to do a lot of work to find exactly how
Yes.
this area is done.
I think it's very important that this is a museum, right? So what is displayed here must be scientifically credible. So the whole information that is displayed here is a synthesis of a huge amount of research. And the people who worked on the contents of the museum are economists and historians, local and international experts, which were hired to synthesize, summarize the available knowledge, which is taken from academic research. So this is also very important indeed.
And let's like we just saw the another exhibition with the King visiting France. So of course, future you'll have other exhibitions that will come along, but it's put them together to find out the history and to put it together so people can understand and know everything. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's something there's a lot of work put
Exactly.
into it.
It's a lot of work, and this room actually, where we saw the exhibition on the journey of King Sisovat, we use it for exhibitions. We also sometimes use it when there is no exhibition. We use it for conferences. We have conferences about history, about economy, about fintech, about financial literacy. We have been working with the Association of Banks of Cambodia. We have very closely been working with the Fintech Association as well, the Cambodia Fintech Association. So it's a way, to promote all these topics and to build awareness and to make the museum a lively place. As you see, we have two entrances, a monumental one to come in the permanent exhibition, the garden entrance to just visit the temporary exhibition, join a conference, have a coffee, discuss, So this helps to make the museum a lively place, a repository of knowledge indeed, but also a lively place. And we also have a library on the first floor as well. Actually.
Oh, excellent. And your location is pretty central in the French heritage part of the district with the beautiful buildings around here. Can you tell us a bit more about the area?
It's very central. We are so on the one hand we are on 106, so basically nearby Psaritre and Psacha, so on a very central lane that goes all the way from the river to the train station. And then this is indeed the entrance of the so-called, French district back in the days, because you have the post office right behind. So our garden entrance is next to the post office. And then along here you have very beautiful buildings, like even the CDC, which is a magnificent building from the 1930s as well. And then you have the Ministry of Economy and Finance, which also is a heritage building. You have the Raffles Hotel. So it's very much a heritage area. So it's a beautiful area, to stroll around and to acquire knowledge, and it's a beautiful part of the history of the country, if only from the architectural point of view.
And of course, how to find out a bit more about the museum? How do we find out?
So we do have, Cambodian marketing is mostly about Facebook. We do have a Facebook page. And I understand that the Presse Sanvarman Museum is not easy. So everybody calls it the SOSORO Museum, SOSORO Museum. And so if you just go on Facebook, on Insta, even on LinkedIn, actually, we have SOSORO Museum pages. And so that's the easiest way to find about it, SOSORO Museum. We have a website, of course, as well. And so when you write SOSORO Museum, then you will find us. All the information is available on social media and on the website.
And your operating hours?
So we are open every day from Tuesday to Sunday included. So we are open during the weekend. We only close on Mondays for maintenance purpose, and we close on national holidays. So if you are, if you have free time on Saturday and Sundays, you can come here. We are open from 9 to 6, from 9 a.m. to 6, and it's open to all. There is no restriction. Everybody can come in. The ticket is very affordable, so it's 20,000 real, so $5 for non-Cambodians. It's 4,000 real, $1 for Cambodians. And for students and kids, it's 2,000 real, so half a dollar, whatever the nationality. So, there is this purpose of promoting education as well. So it's affordable, it's very centrally located, and it's open to all.
As museums go, that's quite affordable actually, because a lot of museums could cost a lot of money. So for 20,000 real or for $5 is not much at all for foreigners to come. And of course, 2,000 real, which is 50 cents for any child under...
Students.
Students, sorry, students.
Child and students.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... I mean, and when you see, you know, what is inside, and I think there is no regret, actually. No regret.
That's right. You've got different aspects of seeing the transaction of such a long time ago until now, and of course, interaction things so people can have a bit of fun while they're here and everything else. So really, and for $1 for a Khmer is nothing really, 4,000 real. I think
especially when you invested in so much knowledge that is accumulated in here and you know, readily available for everyone to ingest.
Because you're not a private company either, it's not a private...
This is the National Bank of Cambodia, so it is a state institution. We have been established by the National Bank of Cambodia. There is no cooperation project or foreign support at all. There is just the National Bank setting a vision, hiring local and international expertise to realize the vision and, you know, supporting and operating this museum. So we are directly under the cabinet of the governor. And we are 100% National Bank of Cambodia, so state institution. Yes.
And how long you've been in charge of the museum?
A little bit more than 2 years now. A little bit more than 2 years. Yes, yes. Took over 2 years.
And the future, what's your goal? Where do you hope to be in the next 4 or 5 years, 10 years?
For the museum, there is a lot to do yet. First of all, we need to update regularly because the part where we are now is quite about the current situation. So we have to make some updates. We will make some improvements in some areas as well. We are going to keep having temporary exhibitions. We are going to have more events and conferences. So there is a lot to happen. We also try to publish some publications, make some publications about the contents of the museum. And we want to grow, of course, the number of visitors more and more. We have had a good year over the past year, but we want more schools, more tourists, more individuals, more corporate tours. You know, we want this place to be as lively as possible. This is what it is designed to be. It's designed to be open to all, and where you go to learn, to exchange, to discuss about the past, the present, and even the future of Cambodia's economy.
And you said you have tour guides and, of course, English and French.
Yes. So we have tour guides which are excellent, and they, for the moment, they can guide in French and in Khmer. Yes. Sorry, in English and in Khmer. In English and in Khmer. So our tour guides are very good, and they can guide in English and in Khmer. And then we have the audio guides in French, Chinese and Japanese in addition to English and Khmer.
And of course you've got a cafeteria on site so they can grab a bite to eat, coffee.
Cafeteria, Café Klang, we've got a beautiful restaurant, City Garden, we have the garden, so you can just come and have coffee without visiting the exhibition, or you can visit. And the temporary exhibition about the journey of King Sisova to France is actually free of access because the entrance in the garden site, so this one is free.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Great, thank you very much for your tour today. I had a really good time.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much.
So there we have just a special tour from the co-director of SOSORO, Blas, where he gave us a tour on the history of the money of Cambodia, which is known as loi. We're standing next to one of the rarest coins that is here still in Cambodia, which was found only just 10 years ago and one of a kind. It's worth coming to have a look into history, where they hold different exhibitions, where we also saw the king in the 1900s, 1905, travel from Cambodia to France, where he got to meet the local people and he was well received and well loved in France. So it's worth to come in to see SOSORO Museum here in the heart of Phnom Penh. This is Anthony Ellis, EAC Insight. Thanks for watching.